over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night, the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people, and these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of, is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on Earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up, they're there, they're saying, what can I do? They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster. And still, people are out, if you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. Slavery would not have been it would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, well, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s, the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and, they didn't want, crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much, much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. No, seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked to a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcasting live from WCPT in Chicago, Chicago's Progressive Talk, our AM 820, our Chicago affiliate. Last night, I came here to Chicago, well, actually yesterday afternoon, on one of the more wild rides of my life. They had 30-mile-an-hour winds gusting to 60 as we were landing. And, they didn't even charge us extra for the roller coaster fee, a little joke I told last night, which is I wanted to tell you about last night. It was just extraordinary. The Kane County Democrats asked me to come out and keynote their annual fundraiser, and it was extraordinary. This Kane County, was a fairly large county in the Chicago area, and a decade or so ago, maybe 30 or 40 people would have shown up, from what I was told. Last night, I think it was 450 people. The room was absolutely packed. And this was, paying to get in because it was a fundraiser for the party. And this, I think, is a sign of what's going on right now in American politics. And it's just so extraordinary. I met so many extraordinary people last night who are just out there, working their hearts out for Democratic candidates. But it really goes beyond Democratic candidates. It's really, at the end of the day, it's not even about partisan politics, in my opinion. It's about saving democracy. We have a Republican Party that has entirely sold out to a bunch of billionaire oil oligarchs to the point where they won't even talk about climate change. In fact, Donald Trump is trying to put together an alternative science committee with a bunch of alternative scientists who are going to tell us that climate change isn't real. Why? Because the Republican Party is funded by the fossil fuel industry and the billionaires it has produced. And so, when we talk about Democratic candidates, we're not just talking about partisan politics. We're talking about the damn survival of the planet. I mean, we're talking about serious stuff. The Republican Party wants to privatize Social Security. We're talking about your not just your ability in old age to have a decent life, but also the issue of whether or not if you're a young person and you get disabled, you could get Social Security disability to stay alive. Like my friend Michael Hutchison, he broke his neck, and for the next 10 years of his life or thereabouts, he has passed away now, but he was quadriplegic. He was paralyzed from the neck down. Social Security provided him with a home, provided him with a nurse, who came in every day and just, helped out. It was just amazing. This is what the Republicans want to destroy. They want to do away with Medicare. They want to do away with Medicaid. They want to make it even more expensive to go to college. They want to privatize our public schools. And Betsy DeVos has already done that to more than half the schools in Michigan. And it's a disaster. So when, people show up at, like last night at the Kane County Democratic Party meeting, it's not just, hey, I'm a Democrat. My dad loved Harry Truman or Franklin Roosevelt. No. It's we've got to save the damn country, the planet, the human race, democracy, our species, other life forms. And then on top of that, we get this guy in the White House who's doing a publicity stunt right now on our southern border to get himself reelected. This is insane. 58 former national security officials now. 58. Now, this includes people who are both Democrats and Republicans who have worked in Democratic and Republican administrations, going back as far as the George Herbert Walker Bush administration. 58 of these people wrote a letter telling America and Congress that Trump's re-election stunt to whip up fear about brown people among Fox News viewers has no factual basis. That was their phrase, no factual basis. It's a stunt. That's all it is. There is no crisis at the southern border. In fact, border crossings are lower than they've been since 1971. But there is a refugee crisis in Central America. Mexico's actually taking the brunt of it. And it's been caused by the Reagan administration and Republican policies of supporting right-wing death squads down in Central America, which, by the way, Trump sending Elliot Abrams down to check out Venezuela. We're still supporting right-wing death squads or their equivalent or their political progeny in Central and South America. Instead of demonizing refugees seeking asylum, we should be putting our heads together and coming up with a plan to help them, right? Pretty straightforward stuff. By the way, get ready for our second hour. Congressman Ro Khanna is going to be here for the full hour taking your calls in the second hour of our show. So if you have questions for him, don't call in until the top of the hour. But, that's going to be our second hour. And in about 15 or 20 minutes, a brand new local host here in Chicago is going to drop by and say hi, and I'm looking forward to meeting her and introducing her to you. Second thing I wanted to share with you is Spike Lee. Donald Trump is trash tweeting Spike Lee. He tweeted, "It would be nice if Spike Lee could read his notes, or better yet, not have to use notes at all when doing his racist hit on your president." You hear that? Donald Trump calling Spike Lee a racist? Who has done more, he's speaking now of himself, Trump, who has done more for African Americans, parentheses, criminal justice reform, lowest unemployment numbers in history, tax cuts, etc., than almost any other president. Right, it's Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, right? Here's what Spike Lee said. He said, for 400 years, our ancestors were stolen from Africa and brought to Virginia and enslaved. They worked the land from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. My grandmothers, who lived 100 years young, a college graduate, even though her mother was a slave, my grandmother, who saved 50 years of Social Security checks to put me through college, she called me Spiky Poo. Before the world tonight, I give praise to my ancestors who built our country, along with the genocide of our native people. He continued, we all connect with ancestors to regain our humanity. It will be a powerful movement. The 2020 presidential election is around the corner. Let's all mobilize. Let's all be on the right side of history. Make the moral choice between love versus hate. Let's do the right thing to get that in there. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem to me like a racist rant, right? I mean, notwithstanding what Donald Trump is saying, it doesn't seem to me even close to being a racist rant. And it's just extraordinary that he would call it that. I mean, frankly, I think obscene. And this is what we've got now in the White House, and what we're having to deal with now on a regular basis is a guy who's like, I mean, he says Spike Lee's calling him a racist. Maybe that's because he knows what's going on. Maybe that's because he knows who he really is. That is to say, Donald Trump knows who he really is. But anyhow, it's weird times. So let's see if we can pick up some phone calls here. Morris in Long Beach, California. Hey, Morris, thanks for listening to KPFK. What's on your mind today?
Professor, you know the vernacular regime change that Barack Obama used and Hillary Clinton used in Libya. What is the difference between their concepts of regime change and what Trump is doing in Venezuela? What is the difference between calling Barack Obama the deporter-in-chief in the Latin community and what Trump is doing with that border wall?
Yeah, I would say what Trump is doing is worse. but I agree with you. I mean, there was a broad consensus in America that we don't want to be in more, quote, foreign stupid wars, which was the phrase that, as I recall, Donald Trump used to describe, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Morris, thank you for the call. Spot on. And, here we go again, right? We're getting ready for another one of these things. This is just so wrong. And it's so, in some ways, so sad what's going on. It's extraordinary. I didn't have an opportunity to watch the Oscars last night. I was at this Kane County gig, and then afterwards, hanging out with some of the people there. But I'm curious what you thought about what happened, too. I'd like to toss that topic open. Green Book won as Best Picture. I haven't seen it. My understanding is that it's the story of a black musician and a white fellow who was kind of his driver and bodyguard, and who was a racist and didn't really like the guy that much. And eventually, as they were traveling around, and the white guy saw all the crap that the black guy went through, and they got to be friends, and they ended up working together and developed a friendship. That's what I read in USA Today this morning. It's a summary of the movie. I have no idea if it is. If you've seen the movie and I'm wrong, please let me know. But the pushback on it is that more often than not, I mean, we went through this phase where black people were characterized in movies in the United States as the villains. They were always the villains, back in the days of the Clint Eastwood movies and things like that. And then it went to, then they became largely invisible, and Muslims became the villains after 9/11. It was people who looked Middle Eastern, and so the new genre of, we need to be inclusive, we need to get black people into movies, became one of, let's have, a white person save this black person. I think Driving Miss Daisy, another movie I didn't see, I admit, but this was cited in this article this morning as being another, kind of white savior movie. And, I don't know what to do with that other than, I think it's a good thing that we're acknowledging this, that we're understanding the meta stories behind these things. I mean, I would say even 15, 20 years ago, certainly people in the African-American community, the Hispanic community, the Muslim community, Asian communities, other minority communities, certainly the gay community, they got the meta story. That is the story behind the story, the foundation, the framework within which the story was allowed to exist, and it couldn't go outside that framework. They got that about how minorities were characterized on television, for the last 60 years in the United States, and in movies going all the way back to the beginning of movies. And they got that there are changes happening. But it's like, where does that go? And what'd you think of the Oscars? I understand there was a beautiful performance, Lady Gaga and a fellow whose name I'm not remembering. Bradley Cooper. Thank you, Sean. Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper sang a duet that I guess was just extraordinary. I understand there was some marvelous performances. When Green Book won, Spike Lee walked out. Would you have walked out when Green Book won, or would you have thought, it's at least it's a racially diverse movie, but what about the meta story? I mean, what are your thoughts on that too? So we'll be back with your calls and more of the news of the day here on the Thom Hartmann Program in just a minute. By the way, Trump is getting ready to go over and hang out with his good buddy Kim Jong-un, who has trashed the Democrats today.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
When bloody dictators who murder their own brothers or half-brothers are trashing the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is doing something right. And welcome back, Thom Hartmann. Welcome back, Thom Hartmann here with you. And Jesse in Miami, if I can make this thing work.
Can you hear me?
It should be magically putting you on the air. There you go, Jesse. I'm using my phone for call screening here, and it's not the most. During the next break, I'm going to be able to actually use a computer. But anyhow, what's up, Jesse?
Hey, you always. Hey, Mr. Trump is using Venezuela to pretty much smear socialism. I'd like to get your opinion on what you think socialism is. And then just to put this in there, we have public schools, and that's based off socialism. But why are we not social if we get an education from socialism? So between those two, I added the other one, but thanks. But waiting to hear your opinion.
I think the message, Jesse, I think the message that we need to be conveying is pretty straightforward. And I realize that there are a lot of elected officials in the Democratic Party, particularly those not on the, quote, far left, who disagree with me. But I think that and in fact, I sat next to an elected official last night who was talking about how we can't go too extreme. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You know, who's going to pay for public schools for everybody? But we do have public schools for everybody, K through 12. And what I would say to people who say that to me and who raise that question and ask it is that socialism is where the state, at the request of the people, works together to provide a social safety net through which people can't fall. That there is some safety in that situation. And that the word socialism was appropriated by murderous dictators like Stalin and Mao and the Kim family, and they call that socialism. That's not socialism. It's not even really communism. It's a murderous dictatorship. And the United States has always been a socialist country. George Washington signed the first legislation to create a poor house in Washington, D.C. that provided housing, food, medical care, and clothing to indigent people in Washington, D.C. in 1791. And we have expanded socialism ever since. And so we have always been a socialist country. We have socialist fire departments. We have socialist public schools. We have socialist Medicare. We have socialist Social Security. We love socialism as Americans. You know, socialism has been part of our lives. We want socialism. The question that we have to debate, the question that we're really trying to debate right now between Democrats, Republicans, and frankly, between Democrats themselves within the Democratic Party, is how much socialism is appropriate. At what point? How big a welfare state do you want to have? Do we want to be like Denmark, where nobody ever worries about getting sick, you know, in terms of its financial impact on their family, where anybody can go to school all the way up to getting an MD and even be paid $200 a month to go to school, to go to college, where a job is basically guaranteed with a minimum wage is $18 an hour, where people have a good life? Do we want to be like Denmark? Do we want that kind of socialism? Or do we want to be like the United States in the 1940s or the 1930s, or maybe even the 1920s, when there wasn't Social Security, but there were public schools? You know, do we want to get rid of a lot of the socialism that we have and pare it back and go back to that Republican vision? That, I think, is the debate, Jesse. I really do, and I think that that's the one that we've got to deal with. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Patricia in Naperville, Illinois. Hey, Patricia, thanks for listening to WCPT, where I'm hanging out today. What's on your mind?
Well, I was listening to the comments you made about Green Book.
Mm-hmm.
I did see it, and
Okay.
I saw it before the Oscars. I had no intentions of looking at the Oscars, but about the last hour of it, I did. I think it was more of an enlightenment movie. I've seen Driving Miss Daisy and Green Book, and you know, Driving Miss Daisy was more like, okay, I'm gonna do what I should do, and you should be thankful for that. I'm going to provide some kind of retirement. I mean, and then, the insults. It was just different than Green Book. Green Book was more, yes, the man, he was just prejudiced, because of lack of knowledge. And the more and then he was very uneducated. He would fly off the handle like lightning. And
you're talking about the white guy in the movie.
Yes, right, the Italian fella. And then the more he got to know this other man, and it just, it's like it opened up his eyes. And what I got out the movie was, the main reason I believe that we always got to have a villain, and not necessarily talking about a movie now. It's just in life. We always got to have those people. Those people is the reason you don't have enough money. Okay? Those people are the reason you don't have a job. And as long as we keep people talking about those people, then they'll throw us some crumbs while they take the whole cake away. But, and I think that's just the whole background of racism and prejudice, because if we ever got together and saw that we had more in common than not, I think it would be scary for the 1-2%. And it's one.
Do you think that was part of the message of Green Book?
Yes.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what I think you're saying here, Patricia, is that Driving Miss Daisy was sort of about what a black man had to do to survive, right? And again, I haven't seen any of these movies, but just from
how they kind of, took him, went along with him. They, good white folks, they was nice to him, and he should be thankful and so forth.
Right, but it was more about how black people had to survive in that day. Whereas Green Book was more about the redemption of a white guy. It was a white guy being enlightened. Is that what the movie meant to you?
Yes.
Well, that seems like a good message. I don't understand why. Well, I guess there's always multiple messages. Yeah, it would seem so.
That was a super good message. And one other thing I would like to say, Laura Underwood comes from Naperville. She came out of the same school my son.
I sat at the table with her last night.
I like how
she's
answers.
Extraordinary.
I'm talking to the TV, okay? I'm saying, yes, you are bringing the message. The reason why I wanted to raise my son here was I never wanted him to be prejudiced. And the reason why, and I don't understand why anyone wants their kid to be prejudiced, but to be prejudiced and get over it leaves a residue. To never been prejudiced, you can't ever go there. And when
that's interesting.
When they asked her, well, didn't you feel funny, 80-some% white? She said, no, this is the neighborhood that raised me.
Yeah, absolutely. Patricia, I got to run. We're hitting the break here. Thank you so much for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And we'll be back with more of your calls. And, actually, Joan is going to be here in just a second, too, so stick around. Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night, I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago, essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night, the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people. And these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of. is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up. They're there. They're saying, "What can I do?" They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster, and still people are out. If you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. Slavery would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and they didn't want crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much, much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. No, seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked to a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Nancy in Huntley, Illinois. Hey, Nancy. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
Hello?
Hey, Nancy. You're on the air.
Great. Tom, I want to tell you, I live in Kane County, and I went to the Kane County event last night. I'm 74 years old. I was active in the Democratic Party for years. I was once VP of the McHenry County Democrats. But if it had not been for you, I would never have known about Bernie. And I worked on that campaign, and in my opinion, it's the Kane County Democrats, the progressive wing, that really has grown the party here. And I was so happy to see you, and I wanted to particularly thank you for all you have done, because I think that had you not been there to give us a lot of information, we would not have ever we would not have known about Bernie and this progressive movement. And I'm just looking for somebody to bring the politics of FDR back. So I want to thank you for being the Moses that did this for us.
Well, thank you. I think you might be exaggerating my role, Nancy, but I appreciate your kind words. And Bernie was Bernie long before I came along, politically speaking. And frankly, FDR Democratic politics never died. They just kind of went underground during maybe a 20-year period. And it is so good to see, FDR and LBJ Great Society, frankly, as well, although his name has been tarnished by the Vietnam War. But LBJ did a lot of good, and the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all those things. It's so great to see them coming back, and that's so much my sense, Nancy. That was my sense last night, that there was a lot of progressive energy in that room.
Good. I'm glad. I also want to mention to you about the shame of our losing the Sherman Antitrust Act. Personally, for 3 months, I have AT&T as a provider, and I couldn't get my email to work. In our local Citizens Utility Board, I finally called them, and they were able to motivate AT&T, and I got my email fixed in 2 days. So
yeah, well, that's great.
That's
but yeah,
thank you
monopolies
again,
are not a good
thing. A lot of people you want to talk to.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate the call. It's great to hear from you, and thank you for the call. Charles in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, first of all, for the people who take the Oscars a little too seriously, I just want to remind them that a lot of these people who won probably won in like very tight 5-way races, or in sometimes even Best Picture tight 9-way races. Then
they might have won with like 16% of the vote.
Yeah, they probably won by 1 or 2 votes. So I mean, it was just you take it for what it is. A lot of these people just bumped each other off, and that's all. But you're talking about the movie Green Book. If you want to see something that's just hilarious, watch this spoof that Seth Meyers did last week on his show. It's a 5-minute kind of a Oscar bait promotion for a movie called White Savior, and the voiceover narration says it's a story of a black woman who made history and a man who was white when she did. And it also it says People magazine says this movie is a triumph, and the black person it's based on says this is not at all how it happened. And it's kind of a spoof of Driving Miss Daisy and The Help and Dangerous Minds and The Blind Side, and it's just all about how. It's just funny. It's called White Savior. It's a 5-minute film on.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I'm sure it's available on YouTube.
Really, really good. So I would just ask people to
great.
go online and watch that.
I'll have to check that out. By the way, I mentioned.
I'm white, and I cringe when I see these White Savior movies. It's like, oh God, come on.
Did you see Green Book?
That
Charles,
I have not
did you see
seen,
Green Book?
so I can't judge on that one. But the other ones make me cringe. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Charles. Good to hear from you. And you wonder, well, It's kind of a mixed blessing. I mentioned, by the way, that Joan Esposito is going to be with us in this half hour. She's going to be with us in the last half hour of the show, so it'll be 2 hours from now. My mistake. So I'll be taking your calls here for the next 30 minutes. And then Congressman Ro Khanna will be with us for a whole hour taking your calls. Steve in Park Ridge, Illinois. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks again for coming to the Truman Dinner. I'm reinforcing Nancy's comment previous. I agree with your observation. The blue wave is growing, and it was a microcosm in that formerly red district. The energy and the turnout in that room was really fantastic. I think it's also important to recognize WCPT, because if it wasn't for a progressive radio station, people like Nancy and I would never have known of you or ever hear your message. And I would like you to comment a little bit about the fairness doctrine and how it is that the right wing has more or less taken over the airways nationally, because I don't think there are many WCPTs in the country. And I know Norman Goldman has basically had to end his program because there just wasn't enough support nationally.
Yeah, there are a limited number of progressive commercial radio stations in the country. There's probably fewer than a dozen. They're in some major cities, San Francisco, Chicago, Minneapolis, and smaller cities, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, etc. But the reality is that the major networks. I sat back 10, 15 years ago at a Talkers. Talkers is the big industry Bible, and they have a convention every year, and they have a luncheon. And I sat next to the vice president of programming of Salem Broadcasting, one of the big networks, and who syndicates Michael Medved and Dennis Prager and those guys, and said, hey, you should carry a progressive show. And he's like, our company's owned by a company that publishes Bibles. We would never put a progressive on the air. And I'm like, I'm a Christian. And he's like, it doesn't matter. We're not going to put progressives on the air. And I sat with the United States Senator and the president of another one major network, a major network that owns over 700 radio stations, and said, how about some progressive programming? They have literally hundreds of their stations carrying right-wing programming, 24/7. And he was like, no, we're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. And so there is anybody who thinks that the media in the United States, and that's 2 out of 4 conversations that I've had with senior executives or owners of major radio or television networks, that were just basically saying, we do not want, not just even a progressive message, but a Democratic message on the air. We only want Republican messages on the air. And anybody who thinks, go ahead.
I was going to just say, it would be great if a billionaire like Bezos would buy something like Clear Channel or one of those outlets, and then.
Well, Bezos is fighting unionization in his own company. I'm not sure that he's the savior billionaire you're looking for.
Well, I don't know that.
But there are some.
Yeah,
but there are some great billionaires out there, and on the left, and you don't even have to be a billionaire. I mean, some of these are publicly held companies. Air America was plagued by terrible management, and frankly, and I was there, and I saw it all happen. I left Air America a year before they went down in flames, because I could see which way the wind was blowing. That had nothing to do with its politics. That had to do with the people who were running the network, which was really tragic. Air America lost $17 million. Rupert Murdoch lost $100 million the first year Fox News was on the air. In the third year, Brett Hume gave an interview to NPR in which he said that they were still losing $80 million a year. I mean, that's more money than Air America spent in 7 years. So, it's true that there is a media bias in this country. Republicans have been trying to tell us for years and years and years that there's this media bias that we all have to be freaked out about, because it's all liberals, the whole liberal media, right? They constantly talk about the liberal media. The liberal media is what you're watching me or listening to me right now on. And God bless them, right? All the commercial stations, the Pacifica stations, the Free Speech TV, YouTube, Facebook. But compared to the conservative media, this is the liberal media, but compared to the conservative media, we are very, very small. We are David versus Goliath, and we are growing. That's the good news. And it's a shame Norman had to give up, but I understand, and also where he was in his life and everything. But we are growing, and in fact, a new show. Rick Unger's doing a new show that's replacing Norman's show. So there's some great progressive hosts out there. There's some great progressive stations out there, and I just want to see it grow and survive. And the thing that you can do to help progressive media grow and survive is, if you are listening to a commercial radio station, make a commitment to yourself that today you're going to listen to their commercials and you're just going to pick one advertiser and either walk into one of their stores and say, or restaurants or whatever it may be, and say, I'm here because I heard you on KTNF, or I'm here because I heard you on WCPT, and just let them know, right, that's why you're there. Or Talk 910 in San Francisco, or whatever it may be, KBQ, KTNF, our station in Santa Fe. Tell them that. Or if you're listening on a Pacifica station, help them out. Most of our Pacifica stations, our nonprofits, are in fundraising drives right now. Send them some money. Free Speech TV is in a fundraising drive right this minute. Help them out. These are the ways that you strengthen progressive media. And, also, if you're very, very wealthy and inclined to get into the business, there are constantly radio and television stations for sale, but particularly radio stations all over the country. And there's a great progressive lineup available right now. Warren in Kirkland, Washington. Hey, Warren, you wanted to talk about the Green Book movie?
There's actually a whole reason for the Green Book, because the Green Book was actually a Green Book written by Mr. Green, and it was the Black Traveler's Guide to Jim Crow America. And it was published for nearly 30 years to help black travelers know where to eat, get gasoline, and where to the friendly hotels or even people's homes that they could stay out. And it started basically from anywhere from Connecticut down south, but it also then extended all the way out to California because it became so popular, and they even went international. Wow. And it was on history.com. This article's on history.com, and it's very interesting. It's called The Green Book, The Black Traveler's Guide to Jim Crow America, and I think it's a quick 2-minute read. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Warren, did you see the movie?
No, I didn't see the movie, and I think that Spike Lee was upset because it was the old guard in Hollywood that voted for the less controversial type of movie, and he was kind of upset that the more radicalized movies didn't win the Oscar, and everybody
yeah. Let's call it progressive rather than radicalized, because I don't think anybody was calling
yes,
for.
Thank you very much. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate it, and thank you, Warren, for the call. Holly in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Holly, what's up?
Well, Tom, I've been saying this for some time now, that you and others should sit down with Oprah Winfrey, and with her billions, she could create and manage, she's done it with a TV network, a network of progressive radio stations across this country. And that's what you should do instead of picking these candidates and deciding to promote them. So I hope you'll set up a meeting with her.
I don't have any idea how to even begin to do that, but if anybody listening is buddies with Oprah, give her a shout. It is, I'm sure that this is one of the problems that people who have a lot of money, when it becomes known that they have a lot of money, face, is that everybody's in their face saying, "Hey, I've got the best cause." Look at this friend of Robert Croft, I think his name is, this friend of Donald Trump's, who just got busted down in Florida. There's human trafficking going on. Well, that's a horrible situation. There are organizations devoted to doing something with that. So they're knocking on, no doubt, Oprah's door, right? I mean, whatever happens to be in the news, whatever the crisis du jour is. So it very often is a case of not what you know, but who you know. And if there are connections, go for it. But Holly, thank you for the call. Oprah is a wonderful person, and she does, she understands programming, right? You don't get to be where she is without being not just a genius, but somebody who understands the media. And God bless her. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, live from Chicago.
Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Broadcasting live today from Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820 in Chicago, Illinois. And welcome back. James in Encino, California, listening on KPFK, our Pacific affiliate out of Los Angeles. Hey, James, what's up?
Cheers, Tom. I just wanted to reflect that point that you were speaking to with regard to the fake news, but I find at least as insidious as the right-wing radio is the moderate radio like NPR. Just this morning, NPR, almost a relentless drumbeat for war with Venezuela. Then they're airing smears of anti-Semitism against Jeremy Corbyn. It's this idea of the billionaire agenda, which is absolutely at war with the left. I mean, we saw the same exact smear used against Representative Omar in the House just recently.
Yeah.
So the problem in contrasting ourselves against hate radio, right-wing radio, is that moderate radio, I mean, I drive around and I find myself agreeing with the president and feeling like a lunatic because I'm saying fake news, but there it is. What are we supposed to do about it?
Well, part of that, James, is not so much the media's fault. It's not so much that NPR has decided that they're going to do snarky, awful programming. It's that And you know, I basically quit listening to NPR when they constantly were putting people on from the American Enterprise Institute, the Heritage Foundation, these other right-wing think tanks that are funded by petro-billionaires and others. You know, I don't think I've listened to NPR in a couple of years now, because it wasn't that they were expressing bias. It was in their painful, I mean, just excruciatingly painful effort to be balanced. They were bringing in right-wing points of view that were not even mainstream for the Republican Party in the days that my dad was a Republican, you know, that were just crazy. And, you know, I mean, right up until a year or two ago, they were putting climate deniers on. And, you know, and that's not, I mean, yeah, you know, if I was running NPR, it would be a whole different thing, but their mandate is to provide, you know, programming that shows the entire spectrum of America. And the problem is that the billionaires have developed this huge network. This came out of the Powell memo in 1971, where Lewis Powell proposed that the billionaires should fund a network of educational institutions, that it was more powerful to educate 100 students than it was to elect 1,000 politicians. Because that 100 students over the course of their lives would educate 10,000 people, and those 10,000 people would you know, you understand the math, right? I'm not doing it right or saying it the way that I think it was, I forget which one of the conservatives who said it, but that's what they did. They started these think tanks, these educational institutions, in quotes. They started taking over colleges. I mean, literally hundreds of millions of dollars in grants going to colleges all over the country to fund mostly political science courses and economics courses that are fundamentally all about, you know, sharing and trading a libertarian perspective. I don't even call it a right-wing perspective. I'm calling it a libertarian perspective.
Sure.
Most people don't realize the Libertarian Party was created in the 1950s, as I recall. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact year, but it was created in the 1950s by a group called the FEE, the Something Education. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the acronym stands for either, but it was the public lobbying arm of the real estate industry, and they started the Libertarian Party as a way to get public support for their lobbying efforts. It was literally a front for a lobby for the real estate industry in the 1950s. And that has now become one of the major feed sources for places like NPR and CPB. And that's a real problem. James, thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Tyrone in New York City. Hey, Tyrone, what's on your mind today?
How you doing, Tom? Yeah,
I'm well. What's up?
I got to see the movie Green Book, but I also listened to an interview that was done by his brother and his niece. about how
You're talking about
inaccurate
the
movie
black
was.
character in the movie? The actual black character in the movie?
Yes, the brother and the niece of the actual musician. And they were saying how inaccurate it was to put it. They said that the story of the black man would have been more intriguing than to try to make it a feel-good story, because he was actually highly intelligent, very well aware of his being. You know, like this white man didn't have to show him how to eat chicken or what to do with the bones. It was a piece in there that was like really out of character for his brother, is what he's saying. He said that they spoke to Ali, Mashallah Ali, I think his name is, the one that actually played they spoke to him. He apologized to the brother profusely because he never was told that these people had, you know, were even around. So
yeah, I read that in the paper this morning.
Yeah. So you know, they like to make these feel-good movies instead of dealing with the actual facts of how this person's life is actually.
Well, the movie wasn't presented as a documentary. It was based on a true story, and I think we all know that when it says based on a true story, it's going to be messed with. But to have it messed with in a way that made the black character seem like he wasn't as smart as he was, or didn't as aware as he was, or something like that, that's real unfortunate, and that's a reason for genuine, outrage. I mean, if that was what was driving Spike Lee to walk out, I get it.
Yeah.
So,
Tyrone. Yes.
Tyrone, thank you. Thank you very much for that. David in Torrance, California. Hey, David, what's up?
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call. I've been listening to your program, and I like to say that I've lived in this country for 30-some years, and what I've noticed lately that the young people today, they are more progressive than I've ever seen in the past 30-some years. So I think
I agree, and it's organic, by the way. It's not like suddenly FDR got elected and showed the country the light. This is coming from the ground up.
Yes, and I think there's a market for a radio station that put up programming for young people, anything, even music, and mix it with progressive messages. And I think that if there's a public offering like that, even I'm willing to invest in it. I think there's a market for it.
That's interesting.
In the future, I just wanted to relay this message on the air. So
and in the context of in the context of programming, well, that's a kind of a whole nother conversation. But David, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that story. I appreciate it. Warren in is it Kernsville, North Carolina? I'm having a hard time reading my phone here.
Yes, no problem, Tom. Good to speak with you. It's Kernersville. I'm a long.
Oh, hey, Warren. Sean just told me we just have 10 seconds. Can I put you on hold and we can?
Yeah.
Or do you want to say something real quick?
Oh no! Please put me on hold. It's okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And my apologies, Warren, for having missed the time cue there. Up next, Congressman Ro Khanna. He's going to be taking your calls for the full hour on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of that, and we are live today from Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT, AM 820, in Chicago, the Windy City, right down the road from where I grew up. It's great to be back in the Midwest.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night, the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people, and these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of, is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on Earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up, they're there, they're saying, what can I do? They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster. And still, people are out, if you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. slavery would not have been it would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, well, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s, the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and, they didn't want, crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much, much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. Seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked to a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you live from Chicago. And where last night I was keynoting the fundraiser for the Kane County Democrats. It was huge, over 400 people. The entire congressional delegation, 4 Congress people from Illinois, including Lauren Underwood, the new rock star, all were there. They're all from Kane County. It was just amazing. This place is on fire, and I was so pleased to be there. But this hour, with us is Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He is the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, as well as representing part of California in the United States House of Representatives. Congressman, welcome back.
Tom, great to be back on.
Great to have you with us. So, you're going to be here for the hour taking calls, and, 202-808-9925 is our telephone number. And as people are calling in and queuing up, actually we have one ready for you. But first, I just wanted to check in with you. It's been a while since we talked. What do you see as the biggest issues that we should all be paying attention to right now? And what are you up to?
I'm happy to answer that. First of all, I'm glad you got to meet Lauren Underwood, because she's fantastic, and some of these progressive freshmen who have come in are really changing the tenor. This is going to be a busy week in Congress. First, we're all getting on Castro's resolution to overturn Trump's emergency. The interesting thing about that, Tom, is the Department of Defense to this day has not given the president a list of which projects they would cut in order to pay for the wall. And I think that's because the lawyers at the DOD recognize that they are not allowed to engage in domestic enforcement, and it would be a constitutional violation. So you literally have the Department of Defense passively resisting the president's unconstitutional call, and we're going to be making sure that we pass a resolution overturning the emergency. Second,
is that because of the Posse Comitatus Act of 1874, as I recall?
The statute you're saying, or the
the Posse Comitatus that said that the American army will never again turn its guns on American people post Civil War.
Exactly. That's because of that doctrine, and it's because of the. It requires, by the way, that the only funds can be reallocated for military construction, which a wall isn't. And it's long in established case law that you can't use military funding for domestic enforcement. So you literally have the irony. I never thought in this country where you have generals at the Department of Defense showing more restraint and respect for the Constitution than the civilian elected commander-in-chief. And there's a reason, that they haven't enumerated the list, because they know that it's a violation of the law for them to use this funding for domestic enforcement, for the doctrine you lay out. So we're going to overturn it. My guess is the president will veto it, but I think there will be some Republicans who join us in overturning the emergency. And then it's going to be really interesting to see the interplay between the Department of Defense and the president.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were going on to a second topic when I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Well, no. The second topic, of course, Michael Cohen is coming. He's testifying at our oversight committee on Wednesday. That will be interesting.
You're on that committee.
I'm on the committee, and it'll be interesting. So if any callers have any bright ideas of what I should ask him, I'm all open to people's feedback. But we'll see what he has to say about what the president asked him to do, and whether the public knows exactly what was going on, or are there more instances of hush money being paid. But it's going to be a long hearing on Wednesday.
That's fascinating. Okay, well, let's start our National Town Hall meeting here with Congressman Ro Khanna, the Vice Chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing California's, 17th District, 14th District?
17th District, yes.
17th District, thank you. Doing this from memory here. I'm on remote.
Yeah,
so,
that's impressive.
It's been, we repeat it a lot. There you go. Joe in Cupertino, which I think is in the 17th District. Joe, you're on the air with, I think you're Congressman Khanna.
Congratulations, Congressman Khanna, on being selected co-chair to the Bernie Sanders 2020 presidential campaign. I'm so happy that you've been selected. You, Nina Turner, and the lady from AFSCME. I'm sitting in my home, and I'm reading a copy of the Democratic Left, the DSA publication for the month of, or should I say this is volume 2. I picked it up at the delegate meeting last month in California. All it's talking about is labor unions, organization 101, talking about, the issues that our school teachers in Oakland are striking about right now, which is fair pay. But I just can't believe how lucky I am to speak with you. I didn't realize that you were going to get a chance to address Mr. Cohen. Maybe you might ask him, if you can, what Donald Trump told him to tell the Congress. Maybe that would be a good start. But at any rate, I'm very concerned, as you well know, of the H-4 visa thing that is being brought, I guess, for public comment. It appears that the H-1B visa thing is now being exposed, but now they're going after the 100,000-plus Indian women living in my community. They are closing their businesses. They're going back to their country. I think that the wall is a ruse. Do you have anything that you can tell me about that? I'll wait for your response.
Well, I appreciate it. First, I'm honored to be co-chairing Bernie Sanders' campaign. I think he's going to speak to independents and folks left out and communities left behind in an extraordinary way around this country. In terms of the issue you raised on the spousal visa, it's just cruel. What you have here is a case where spouses of those who are on H-1B visas were allowed to work. Many of these people have been waiting for their green card for 10, 15 years. If spouses aren't allowed to work, they tend to often be women, and that's just the statistical fact. Then there is higher incidence of domestic abuse, higher incidence of a lack of independence. And so these are folks who are not competing with traditional American jobs. They're often working part-time, and this administration is trying to strip them of their right to work, and I strongly oppose that. One note, Tom, because I looked it up. I've gone back and forth with Bruce Ackerman, who's one of the biggest legal scholars, and your legal knowledge continues to amaze me, because he says the prohibition on the non-military use of funds expresses the same principle codified by the Insurrection Act and Posse Comitatus, prohibiting the president from commandeering the military for domestic law enforcement. So you were absolutely right.
Yeah, that law's been around for quite a while, and it's a good one. Thank you. Jeanette in Bronx, New York, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Congressman. I just wanted to say I used to be a resident of Cupertino.
Oh,
and
wow.
That was long before your time. But I'm calling with, my peace group, the War and Law League, warandlaw.org, has put together a resolution to preserve the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF Treaty. And we are very concerned that the President and his gang of thugs has unconstitutionally suspended with the intent of abrogating and destroying the INF Treaty that was signed into law by the Senate and by Gorbachev and Reagan. And we have put together a very detailed, a really good, concise, but detailed resolution that we are hoping that you might want to introduce. You have been so bold in your activities on Yemen, and you are so well placed in your committee assignments, as well as having the ear of many progressives. I'm afraid that my generation, which grew up with duck and cover, is and our alertness to the nuclear threat, it seems to be dying out, and there's a complacency about it. Young people seem to have grown up with explosive video games and ideas of, mushroom clouds being normal, and even now, the development of these mini nukes that are more usable. I mean, this is an atrocity, and I think that, the first thing on people's radar, which should be, along with climate change, should be having a planet to have, a climate discussion on. So we're hoping that you will look at this. My group has been in touch with your office. We've actually even tried to speak with your foreign policy advisors about it, and it can be seen by anybody if you go to warandlaw.org/files. It will open up a House resolution. There is also a Senate resolution there, and you can fix it up or change it in any way you want. But I'm very, very, very concerned that the INF Treaty, which has stood as a wall against nuclear
Jeanette,
annihilation.
let's let the Congressman get a word in here. Congressman?
Well, Jeanette, thank you for your work. I mean, as you know, the doomsday clock, which measures the risk of a nuclear confrontation, continues to tick towards midnight, and we have been at greater risk than we have been since even times during the Cold War. And Lee Espin and others have spoken about the risk. So I really admire your work in trying to raise this issue. Louis Frankel has led a letter in Congress that I support to make it clear that we should be part of the INF and that we should be engaged in diplomacy with Russia and China. This is even more urgent with Putin recently talking about threats to the United States with hypersonic weapons and escalating these tensions. I'm happy to look at your resolution if you send it again to my office, and I'll have a look at your website. And if there's a way that resolution goes further than what Louis Frankel is doing, I'm happy to be supportive. But I share your principle that we need to be part of the INF and can't be reneging on these commitments.
Amen. Let me just toss in here. Because I'm on remote, I'm dealing with hard breaks, and I don't always know exactly when the break is coming. So so for our questioners, please keep your questions short for the Congressman so we can get through them and we can get to his answers. David in Columbus, Ohio, listening on WGRN. You're on the air.
Hello, Congressman, and thank you very much for appearing on this. I have a question. It's more on domestic rather than foreign policy. I think your foreign policy is great. I think opposing the Venezuela intrusion is great, but I'd like to talk a little bit about domestic policy. I think.
Speaking of that, David, let me put you on hold here, and we'll get back to it, because again, I'm sorry, I missed my time cue there, or I didn't get a time cue. Congressman Ro Khanna is with us. It's our national town hall here with Congressman Khanna. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and represents the 17th District of California. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And Congressman Khanna's website is Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov, and you can tweet him at RepRoKhanna. Thank you. David in Columbus, Ohio. Let's try this again, David.
Okay. Quickly, Ohio is looking at increasing its gas tax by 28 cents. I think this is somewhat regressive. This is to pay for $1 billion worth of maintenance and repairs. When Obama was president, $500 million was pledged to Ohio for high-speed rail and rail improvements. I'd like to see the federal government help us a little bit so we're not all paying regressive tax and we're not stuck in cars and exacerbating the global warming problem.
Well, I agree with you completely. I think the lesson from France and Macron was that if you want to be aggressive on tackling climate change, it can't be on the backs of the working class who often haven't been responsible for the pollution. I mean, the responsibility for the pollution is many of the top 100 corporations and also those who are extraordinarily wealthy who are consuming more of the resources. So this is why I support the Green New Deal, which is a vision of the federal government supporting things like high-speed rail, like electric vehicles, like investment in solar and wind, and helping states build the industries for the future to create jobs and invest in infrastructure, but having the tax burden fall on either the corporations that have caused the problem or the top 1% that have benefited from the resources. We shouldn't be having regressive taxation to tackle climate change.
Yeah, amen. Let's see here. Patrick in Los Angeles. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Hope you're doing well. You know, the discourse with conservatives is always inflammatory. And, you know, Democrats oftentimes are playing patty cake while they're playing bloody knuckles. You know, I want to see, you know, Republicans embarrassed more, specifically talking about them as the party of irresponsibility, because conservatives never want to be held responsible for anything. Child poverty, unemployment, the environment, paying their taxes. Conservatives don't want to pay taxes ever. They don't want to be, you know, they don't want to pay for the roads or for the court system or for ports of entry or anything. Can you guys embarrass them more, please? I mean, it's a request. I want to get them. I want to see them because they're shameless. Can you use that? They are the party of
Plus, they ran up over $20 trillion in debt with their tax cuts and their wars. Congressman.
I think that's what Thom Hartmann tries to do every show, right? We need more voices like that. But you know, it's a fact. I mean, the Republicans come in, they run up the deficits, and they run it up by two very simple things. They get us into foreign wars, and they give massive tax cuts to the top 1% that's already doing very well. And then the deficits come. Then what happens is we finally get a Democrat in. We get very excited that we're going to get infrastructure or education or healthcare spending, but the Democrat is so tied down cleaning up the Republican messes that we never have the public investments that we need. And so you're absolutely right that the Republican policies have been irresponsible. They've been irresponsible in terms of America's economic growth. What built America was our strategic investments in our education, our research institutions, our infrastructure. That's what built the middle class, that created America's economic growth. And what the Republicans have done is sort of raided it, privatized it, pillaged it to give benefits to the elite investor class. The same thing they did, by the way, on Wall Street with corporations, where they, in the 1980s, cut research and development.
We're out of time. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at thomhartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at thomhartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at thomhartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at thomhartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Welcome back. Congressman Ro Khanna with us for the hour, taking your calls. And Veronica in Chapel, is it Nebraska, or is it Chappell?
It's Chapel.
Chapel. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yes, it is. Anyway, for all the knowledge that you've been giving me for just over 2 years now, I'm grateful. And Ro Khanna, you inspire me. So my question for Michael Cohen is if he knew of any deals made between Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump or his campaign.
Well, ma'am, I appreciate the kind words, and I think that that's something we need to understand. I mean, did Cohen know about what the White House was coordinating with the Senate and what the president was coordinating with McConnell at the time? And who in the White House was advising him on testimony, and why did anyone encourage him to lie? So I definitely think seeing the Trump's relationship with some of the congressional leaders, both during the campaign and at the White House, and seeing if they were complicit in any of the illegality is worth raising.
Laura in Sarasota, Florida, listening on our affiliate down there, WSLR. Laura, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hello. I've got a question. I want to know who are the most effective lobbyist organizations supporting Medicare for All that we can contribute to. We're going to have to put our money where our mouth is to support Medicare for All. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I can't solicit on behalf of other organizations, but I can tell you that there are a lot of grassroots groups that are doing a terrific job in pushing Medicare for All. And Pramila Jayapal has convened a lot of the outside groups on this, including the nurses unions, the Move On, the Democracy for America, Progressive Campaign for Change. We've really looked at all of the different grassroots organizations, and there are many, and some of them are just spontaneous in districts. And so the movement has come really from outside groups that have been organizing, and I'm confident that we will get a vote in the House sometime this year.
Yeah, and last night I met a man who, at this fundraiser for the Kane County Dems, who was a physician with Physicians for National Healthcare Policy, which I keynoted their convention in Seattle like 15 years ago. I mean, they've been around forever. And then I'm on the national board or the advisory board rather, of Progressive Democrats of America, pdamerica.org, Tim Carpenter's old organization. So along with all the other ones you mentioned, there's some great stuff out there. And also support your members of Congress who say that they will vote for Medicare for All. Do you not agree, Congressman?
Well, I think that they've got to be active and mobilized. Congress is great, but that should be a requirement of being in Congress, is to support Medicare for All. We shouldn't need support for that.
There you go. There you go. We'll be right back with more of Congressman Ro Khanna right after this. Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people, and these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of, is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on Earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up, they're there, they're saying, what can I do? They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster. And still, people are out, if you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. Slavery would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, well, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s, the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and, they didn't want, crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. Seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked to a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcasting live from Chicago, from WCPT, our affiliate there, or here, or there, whatever. Congressman Ro Khanna is on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour in a national town hall meeting here. His website, Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Ro Khanna. And Congressman, you're still with us, right?
I am. I'm looking forward to the whole hour.
Okay. Great. Okay. I on remote here, I can't see. I don't see the camera monitor, so it just.
You keep having me back,
sure
so I assume there's enough interest.
Yeah, there absolutely is. People absolutely love it, and yes, Bruce in Long Valley, New Jersey. You are on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Mr. Connor. My question is Medicare for all. When Bernie's on TV, he never, or very, very seldom, ever says how he's going to pay for it. I follow him for a couple of years. He had the Wall Street charging fees on trades and that. But, you hear all the time the Republicans said it's going to cost $23 trillion. And then you turn on another station, it's going to cost $23 trillion. They always throw that out. Not one guy ever forgets to say that. And I think Bernie should say that the current costs of what the company is paying for, what the people are paying their co-pays and their premiums to the companies are like $35 to $40 trillion. When Bernie has the opportunity on TV with a mass audience watching him, he should try to throw that out. And I know he has a lot of things on his mind, but the major issue is Medicare for all. And he should try to throw that out, that the current system's costing the corporations and the people like $35 to $40 billion. And I feel, in it right now, I feel that they're doing this. They don't want the Medicare for all, because if people have Medicare, the labor costs will go up for everybody in all wage categories. You'll have engineers jumping from one job to another, knowing that they have Medicare, health insurance, and they'll go to the highest bidder and get more money. And that's one of the reasons behind these corporations don't want to give it out. The Republicans don't want it. Okay? That's my beef.
Bruce, well, I agree with you completely. One of the reasons I think Senator Sanders asked me to co-chair his campaign is I've tried to make the economic argument for Medicare for all. In fact, there's a clip of me on Fox News where I say the current system costs $49 trillion when you factor in insurance and pharmaceutical costs and hospital facility fees. And it's very disingenuous to say Medicare for all costs $32 trillion. Yeah, it's compared to what? Compared to the current system, which is $49 trillion. So you're actually saving $17 trillion. And here's the reality of how you pay.
That's over a decade.
Right now. Over a decade, exactly. I mean, and right now people are paying maybe $5,000 if they're lucky a year for their insurance. And what you say to folks is, okay, now if you have Medicare for all, you'll pay a fee, and that fee will be maybe $800 for the year. So it's not that you're not going to pay for something; you're just going to pay 5 times less. And what would you rather do? Keep paying it to the insurance companies, or pay a small fee to the government and have it at 5 times less? And finally, to your point, Medicare for all is about freedom. It's not just about care and morality. It's about having economic freedom to change jobs, to become entrepreneurial, to have agency. Right now, so many people are trapped in their jobs because they fear losing health care. And if health care was not connected to employment, and if everyone had health care, there'd be far more mobility in people's career choices, and they'd have far more agency. And so I think Democrats have to talk about choice and freedom in economic mobility when we talk about Medicare for all. But Bruce, I completely agree with you that we need to make the economic argument for the policy.
Yeah, I'm assuming you meant 1/5 less, right?
1/5, yeah, 1/5 in terms of
because about 20% is is what they're skimming off the top. There you go, Barbara in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hello, good morning. I was wondering, what is the current role and makeup of the superdelegates in the DNC? I heard that they would still be able to vote their choice if there's not one primary candidate that gets 50% of the primary votes. And I was wondering, Congressman, if you could please clarify what exactly is going on with the superdelegates and whether that they could prevent a progressive candidate from getting in. Thank you.
My understanding, and I would want to look at the details, but my understanding is that they cannot vote on the first ballot, the superdelegates, members of Congress and some of the others who are part of the DNC, about 700 folks, but they can vote on a second ballot. So if no one got the majority, they would be able to vote on a second ballot. It was a compromise. I mean, I believe I'm a member of Congress and I'm a superdelegate, and I don't think I should have a special vote in any ballot. But it was a compromise. They couldn't get enough DNC voters for eliminating superdelegates' voting rights altogether, so they hit a compromise and said, okay, you can't vote on the first ballot, but can vote on the second ballot. As a practical matter, I think it would be very, very tough for superdelegates to try to throw an election in a second ballot to someone who wasn't the leader in the popular vote, but theoretically it is possible.
Mark in San Francisco, listening on AM 910, our iHeartRadio affiliate in San Francisco. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Tom and Congressman, I think what's crucial in this election is how we message the Green New Deal and as a jobs creator, opposed to the Republican scam, which was a tax cut supposedly to make jobs. I think you ought to throw that back at them and say, you have the real jobs creating program.
Well, we do, and it's not just politics, it's the truth. I mean, if you want to put folks back to work at GM who were laid off, why were they laid off there? Because folks aren't buying sedans as many anymore, and they're buying SUVs. Well, there's not a single SUV that's electric because the market doesn't allow for that. Now, if you have a Green New Deal policy that allows for a refundable tax credit for electric vehicles, and you link that to domestic manufacturing, you could get folks at the GM factories back to work in making electric SUVs, put people back to work in the very communities that have faced deindustrialization. So what we're proposing with the Green New Deal and some of the specifics are actual policies to build the industrial base and the future in this country and make sure that that future industry isn't in China, that we learn the lessons from the semiconductor industry going to Taiwan, and we ensure that America will lead and that those jobs will be American jobs. That's not going to happen just by giving tax cuts to the investor class. So the economics are on our side. We just need to continue to make the case.
Gene in Atlanta, Georgia. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. Thank you for taking my call. By the way, Tom, thank you for the Harris shaving products. They are so good. I guess everybody should try Harris.
Well, thank you for supporting our advertisers, Gene. So to your question.
And I heard it from you. Yes. And Congressman, I mean, my intervention is about the Medicare for all. You know what? I don't get it when people in a great country like that saying how we're going to pay for it. It becomes a habit. We need to erase that type of language. What you mean, how we going to pay for it? I mean, Medicare for all going to create a lot of jobs. In a great country like the United States, a small program like that, that's going to help and save lives. Somebody comment how we going to pay for it. It's just not working. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Well, look, I do think in the richest country in the world, we can afford to make sure every person is born with basic health care. I mean, that's a moral right of individuals. It's something that every other industrialized country has done. But how we are going to pay for it, we shouldn't lose that argument. The reality is that this is going to save the American economy a lot of money. And it's common sense. Think about it. What are the costs that are being eliminated when you have Medicare for all? You're eliminating all the private insurance costs, the $50 million that the Aetna CEO or Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO is making. All of that money is getting eliminated and saved. You're eliminating a lot of the pharmaceutical costs. You're eliminating a lot of the hospital costs where they're jacking up prices for procedures done at hospitals that would cost far less if they were done in doctors' offices. So you're taking all of this excessive private profit out, and you're basically asking people to pay for the actual services that they're getting. So obviously it's a cost saving. The people who are going to be hurt by this are the insurance companies and the pharmaceuticals and the hospitals in certain cases that are big monopolies, and that's why they are fighting so hard with everything they have against this, because their livelihood, the gravy train that they've been riding on for decades, is at risk. But the argument that this is going to hurt the economy or cost more for ordinary Americans is just flat out wrong.
Well, and a good example of that, we just have 40 seconds to the break here. A good example of that is, I believe it was Toyota. This was 6-8 years ago. I'd have to look it up to get the exact details, but they were going to site a new factory in the United States. And there were several states. In fact, there was a lot of speculation, was it going to go to North Carolina? I think Wisconsin was a big contender, Michigan maybe even. And for the better part of a year, it was, bouncing around. And they ended up going to Canada. And when they were asked why, they said because there's over $2,600 worth of health care in every car made in the United States, and we just don't want to pay it.
That's a great example, Tom. Those are the things we need to be talking about.
Yeah, amen. Congressman Ro Khanna with us, taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back. You can tweet him at Rep. Ro Khanna. His website, Khanna, KHANNA.house, as in House of Representatives, .house.gov.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Broadcasting live from our Blowtorch affiliate WCPT AM 820 in Chicago. And welcome back. Jacob in Baltimore, Maryland, watching us on YouTube Live. Jacob, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. And thank you, Ro Khanna, for leading a lot of the progressive foreign policy and being a voice there. My concern is, and I've mentioned this on Tom's program before, that a lot of our foreign policy currently is currently framed around don't be an imperial power, which I think is a good start. But I think we need a broader vision. And I'm looking at the Green New Deal here as a national framework for policy. And I'm wondering if we could look back to the Marshall Plan and say that our foreign policy as progressives is a global green Marshall Plan to leapfrog all of the developing nations of the world over fossil fuel development and into renewable energy, and sort of frame our foreign policy around that.
Well, I definitely think our foreign policy has to have tackling climate change as one of the key pillars, that America is going to lead in creating clean technology, in investing in renewable energy, in being a leader in energy efficiency, that we're going to work with other nations in a cooperative way to tackle one of the biggest challenges that humanity has faced. And my view is that America, our progressive foreign policy should be one of a greater restraint when it comes to military interventionism and a greater restraint when it comes to the hard power, but we should be expansive when it comes to cooperating on tackling climate change, tackling global poverty, tackling the need to have primary education for people around the world. That our vision should be what is America doing to contribute to helping lead a better planet, and that is true American idealism.
Grace in Glendale, California. You are on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi. Thank you, Congressman, for all the work you're doing. My question is about income inequality. I know a lot of people who have done everything they're supposed to do. They went to school, they started working, they work full time, and they're just barely making it because all the money is going to the top virtually everywhere. And I'm just wondering, A, what Congress can do about this, but also my idea is, can we do what other countries have done where we make a percentage cap between the top and the bottom? So we know they like trickle-down economics. Make it mandatory that if the top is making more, that everybody else has to make more too, so that they don't exceed the percentage between top and bottom.
Well, I think the policies that get to having a livable wage for the bottom are policies like having a $15 minimum wage and gradually pushing it even higher, expanding the earned income tax credit so you can have working folks get what they deserve in terms of productivity increases, and making sure you have progressive taxation at the top so that you don't have 1% benefiting from all of the gains of the economy. And I think you will see the Democrats moving towards that kind of policy, which is basically saying people should earn what they deserve.
Yeah, amen. Congressman Ro Khanna is with us taking your calls for the hour. He'll be back in just a moment with more of your calls. You can tweet him at Rep. Ro Khanna. His website, Khanna, KHANNA.house.gov. He's the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and represents the 17th District of California in the U.S. House of Representatives. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day. All this stuff and more, it's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Congressman Ro Khanna is with us taking your calls. Stephen in San Francisco, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Yeah, gentlemen, great show. There was Michael Cohen did an NDA with Shara Bajard a while ago. It was in Vanity Fair. You can ask him about that. And I mean, how many cell phones does this guy have? He's a treasure trove of information. He's a hoarder of evidence.
Yeah. Well,
so that's your point, Stephen.
I certainly think I'll look at the Vanity Fair article and the NDA that you reference and see if there's any line of inquiry there.
Okay. Pedro in Ben Lomond, California. You're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. My question is about Venezuela, and I have not heard any forceful response from the Democrats in general. So I'm waiting for that. So just like we're seeing for the national emergency, I was expecting something more forceful as far as the way we're headed in that situation. I'm over 50, so I've been around long enough to remember what happened in the 80s, 70s, and in the 90s. El Salvador, Honduras, and Panama, and I think we're headed that way, especially with Elliot Abrams now being in the picture. Can we expect a more forceful response from the Democrats in general on this situation, just to avoid a repetition of the caravans, the genocide, and abuse of human rights?
Well, the reality is that the Democratic Party is split. I spoke out very early. I wrote an op-ed about why I oppose interventionism in Venezuela. It's in the Washington Post. You can find it. And I make a very pragmatic case. Look, Maduro, in my view, has had failed policies, and no one defends some of his human rights abuses. But the biggest gift we could give Maduro is to intervene. It will just rally his troops, and it could lead to greater chaos and greater bloodshed. That was the lesson of Libya. When we removed Gaddafi, we had no plan for what comes next. And the Pope has been out there saying that the key has to be to reduce bloodshed, to have a diplomatic solution that the Vatican would help facilitate. And Mexico and Uruguay have been leading that call. We should be learn the lessons of this type of intervention and oppose the creep towards getting involved in another military conflict. And so I have been candidly a minority voice on this in the Congress, but have been talking to my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus who are supportive of making the case against intervention, and then making the case to our caucus that we should not be quiet as we inch towards another war. This is always what happens. The Democrats, progressives, we don't speak loud enough when the march happens to war, whether that was Iraq or whether that was Libya, and then we often regret when that takes place. We need to be loud now and make the case that we shouldn't have another mistake.
Yeah, and I believe this is going to be the centerpiece of Donald Trump's 2020 reelection campaign, but, we'll see. Dave in Indian Hills, Colorado, you're on the air with Congressman Khanna.
Hi, Congressman. It's an honor to talk to you. My question is about my concern for the Medicare Advantage programs and the erosion that they have on Medicare. And we had a medical provider that we used to go to that switched to only accept Medicare programs, Medicare Advantage providers. And so I lost him as a medical provider. Is there a way for these Medicare Advantage programs to be made illegal?
Yeah, I think most people don't realize, Congressman, the Medicare Advantage is not actually Medicare. It's privatized health insurance that's subsidized through the Medicare Trust Fund or the Medicare funds. And, well, enough said. You're the guest.
No. Well, look, the Medicare for All bill that Bernie Sanders, Pramila Jayapal, and others don't have a place for Medicare Advantage. It's everything will be funded by Medicare. You would have that option. Now, you could get private insurance supplemental if it was not duplicative of what Medicare would provide. But the Medicare that Sanders and Pramila and others envision is Medicare that would have dental, that would have vision, that would have long-term care. So the need to have supplemental insurance would be very small. And in practice, the vast majority of people, unless you're super wealthy, would just be on a Medicare system that wouldn't have private interests co-opting it. So the bill themselves don't have a role for Medicare Advantage precisely because of some of the concerns that you raise.
Congressman, with apologies to our listeners who are still on hold, we only have 30 seconds left. What should we be looking at and for in the coming weeks?
Well, I think we need to really push back hard on the emergency and realize that this is an extraordinary constitutional crisis where you have the president, from the first time really without a national security crisis, trying to subvert Congress's role for appropriation, and we need to resist that. And then we need to make sure that we are continuing to hold the president accountable and make sure the Mueller report becomes transparent, that we have Cohen's testimony. And it's not just as a gotcha on the president. There is conflict of interest, financial conflicts of interest, a rot in the executive branch that our founders would never have envisioned, and we need to make sure that that is exposed.
Amen. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us again today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Congressman Ro Khanna.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night, I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night, the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people. And these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of, is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on Earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up, they're there, they're saying, what can I do? They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster. And still, people are out, if you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. Slavery would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, well, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s, the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and, they didn't want, crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much, much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. No, seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked with a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you live from Chicago, from WCPT. And being on the road here, we can just make this an anything goes hour if you would like, if there's any topics that are on your mind that you think are worthy of bringing up. I noticed Jeff Tiedrich tweeting this morning about Donald Trump's tweeting habits. This is what a great summary. 6:32, he whines about the wall. 6:36, he retweets himself. 6:50, he attacks Spike Lee. 6:58, he whines about oil prices. 6:59, he retweets his daughter. 7:30, he retweets himself. 7:53, he attacks an old man dying of cancer. And at 7:58, he whines about the wall again. That's Donald Trump, whining, attacking, complaining. It's just incredible. It's like he reflects Fox News so well. Louise and I drove to Forest Grove, a town nearby. It's about 30, maybe 40, 45 minutes away over the weekend on Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon after I got a bunch of writing done, and we just take a drive in the country and see how long we could drive just on all electricity. And it was really cool because when we got to Forest Grove, there was a place where I could plug the car in and recharge it, which we did while we had lunch, and just drive on all electricity coming back too. And what's so cool about that is in Oregon, our electricity, most of our electricity is fossil free. It's coming from dams on the Columbia River. I know the electricity we get at our house is 100% from there, and it's very, very cheap. We've got one of these plans where when I recharge the car at night, I'm paying 4 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. So, which is like less than $1 a gallon, or in the neighborhood of $1 a gallon for the equivalent, to drive a car, which is incredible when you think about it. But in any case, Donald Trump, complaining about this stuff, and at the same time that there are all these very real problems all over the world, and that are not being dealt with, or are being dealt with in just ways that are just deeply and profoundly, I was going to say incompetent, but it's like incompetence raised to the level of malice. it just seems like there's no other way to describe it beyond that. But let me pick up some of your phone calls. Let's see what's on your mind these days. Steve in Minneapolis, listening on KTNF. I'll be there next week, actually, for the Blue State Ball. Steve, what's up?
Hi. Yes, indeed. Medicare for all. And I know the question always is asked, well, how are we going to pay for it? I guess I would like to submit that we are paying for it now. People are getting health care, but in a very efficient system, in a very inefficient way. Big executive salaries driving up the costs of the for-profit corporations. So perhaps somebody's talked about that, but maybe that's another little twist here. We're already paying for health care for all. Let's just do it in a more efficient way.
Yeah, so that's a great way to reframe the rebuttal. Somebody says, well, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? You say, well, you're already paying for it, but if we reconfigure it so that it's all Medicare rather than these private banks that call themselves health insurance companies that skim 20% off the top so their executives can literally make $1 billion, then you're going to save a lot of money. So yeah, well said, Steve. Thanks a lot for that, and thanks for listening to KTNF. Karen in Seattle. Hey, Karen. Thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hi. This is my first time calling. I heard somebody a few callers back talk about how their doctors would not cover traditional Medicare, just said Medicare Advantage plans. And it's been a few years since I've retired from the healthcare industry, but I used to manage a psychiatric clinic, and one of the psychiatrists decided he wasn't going to accept Medicare patients, and the hoops that we had to go through. And I think it's against the law. Doctors have to, if they are part of they have to be a part of the Medicare provider in order to be on the Med Advantage plan, and they can't refuse traditional Medicare. I think it's against the law. So I think that person should check it out a little further.
Well, here's the question, Karen. If somebody is on regular Medicare and their doc says, I'm not taking you anymore because I'm only going to go with these privatized plans that are called this phony baloney name of Medicare Advantage, and who do they go to? I mean, is it the state insurance commissioner? Is there a federal agency? Who do they complain to?
They should report him to Medicare.
Okay, who at Medicare? I mean, if
I'm not sure. I don't know. You'd have to go on the website and find out there. But there are places to do that, because Medicare Advantage plans, even though they have extras like dental and vision and all this other crap, they have to follow the Medicare rules about what to cover.
So,
and if a doctor has to contract with Medicare to get out of accepting assignment, and I really think that that it's against the law what those doctors are doing. I don't know all the facts, but I think they should
I suspect
check it out
you're
with
absolutely
Medicare.
right.
Yeah,
I suspect you're absolutely right. And another place to start might be to call, if you have a Democratic congressperson, I'm guessing a Republican would just laugh at you and hang up.
Yeah.
But if a provider got a phone call from a member of Congress, it might cause them to sit up and pay some attention. Or they may have somebody on staff who would know, who could do something about it.
Yeah, right. Or the state insurance commissioner. I don't know what state this person was from, but I know I'm from Washington State, has a really good insurance commissioner. Anyway, I couldn't resist. It's the first time I've ever called. I listen to you every day, but I couldn't resist when I heard that. I thought, wait a minute, that's against the law as far as I can.
Karen, thanks a lot for the call.
So
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great to hear from you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Paul in Lucerne, California. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hey, first of all, for that lady that was talking about who you complain to your congressperson or your state constituent caseworker, because they, Republic, if you have a Republican one, you can call a Democratic member of your state and they'll actually help you. I've seen that happen.
Okay, so call like your state representative or your state senator, if they're a Democrat.
or your federal one too, or anyone of them, and they have constituent workers that will actually help you with that. That's a real big deal.
Makes perfect sense.
They do that. That's their job. I was calling to talk to Congressman about Santa Clara County actually has proof that corporations are not people. They won the case. I went to high school there. And it was a really big deal because, if Santa Clara has the best fruit in the world, in my opinion. The best tasting apricots, the best cherries, the best everything. All right? Yep. They're super quality, super good. And it's because of the Bay and all that stuff. But we don't have time to talk about all that. But they won the case. Now, Santa Clara County has a piece of paper saying we won the case. Southern Pacific Railroad has a piece of paper saying we lost the case. So I'm not pretty sure Southern Pacific Railroad, since they paid the guy off to say they kind of half won, isn't going to want to give up there. But Santa Clara County would. And if the congressman would
Well, that's interesting. Paul, if you could just pause that for a second and let you finish your rant. For people who don't have any idea what we're talking about, let me just explain very quickly, because I wrote an entire book about this. My book is called Unequal Protection. In 1886, there was a series of 5 or 6, they were called the railroad tax cases. They all originated in the Ninth Circuit Court because Stephen J. Field, who was on the Supreme Court at the time, also, back in those days, prior to the 1890s, justices of the Supreme Court spent 3 months in Washington, D.C. as a Supreme Court justice and 9 months out of the year back home being the head of the circuit court. And Stephen J. Field was both on the Supreme Court and he was the head of the Ninth Circuit. And the railroads, he was in the railroads' pockets. They had promised him that they would support him running for president in the election of 1892 if he would help them get corporate personhood. And so these whole series of tax cases were brought to the Supreme Court. Stephen Fields brought every single one of them, and then he ruled on them when he was on the Supreme Court. And one of them was this famous case of 1886 called Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. And in that ruling, the court ruled that the railroad had to pay the taxes. And the railroad's argument was that we're people, and this is a violation of the 14th Amendment due process. And the court ruled, no, that's not the case. California's Constitution rules here. You have to pay these damn taxes. But the guy who was the clerk of the court, John Chandler Bancroft Davis, who was the son of the very, very wealthy and powerful governor of Massachusetts and was himself a very wealthy and powerful mover and shaker in conservative political circles, he wrote the head note, which has no legal authority, for that decision. And in the head note, he quoted Morrison Remick Waite, the Chief Justice, as saying, well, nobody argues that corporations aren't people, which was completely out of context and irrelevant to the case. So you're right, Paul, that case did not conclude that corporations are people. However, there have been over 40 cases since then where the Supreme Court has quoted not that case of 1886, but quoted the head note and said, Davis in the head note said corporations are people, so we're saying corporations are people, and that's been basically, therefore, the law ever since. I mean, the court can quote Daffy Duck. It doesn't matter who they quote once they've ruled. So while that case was not dispositive or decisive or whatever the fancy legal word is, subsequent and there were previous cases that established some personhood, going all the way back to Dartmouth in 1815, I think it was, or maybe 1819. There have been a number of cases that have established corporations have some standing as persons in order to be sued, in order to pay taxes, things like that. But what you're talking about, yes, that case was a scam and a sham. But since then, we've had all these decisions by the Supreme Court that basically said that it was. So it's not going to be as easy as you say. Okay, back to you now.
Yeah, but it exposes it as a sham and a scam to begin with. And all those cases were based on that one. The most damning one is the Supreme Court in Michigan when the Dodge went to sue Ford for paying people too much wages. They said that was corporations have to make money, and him paying too much wages is hampering us making money. That's illegal. And
yeah, but that was a state Supreme Court decision. Dodge v. Ford is a famous decision.
It went back and cited the Santa Clara as precedent as corporations are people, and they have the right to make money.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I've never actually read Dodge v. Ford. I probably should. But that case, what was always interesting to me is that was never challenged to the Supreme Court. I guess it was just and that's the doctrine that is cited. Although I don't think that it's law that corporations have to put profits.
With the ruling.
Yeah. There you go, Paul. Thank you for the call. It's fascinating stuff to talk about. We'll continue the conversation in just a minute. It is the Thom Hartmann Program. We're broadcasting live today from Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT, as in Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820. And so pleased to be here. Last night, speaking at the Kane County Democratic Party's annual Truman Day fundraiser. It was a great lot of fun.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here. Carol in Republic, Michigan, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Carol, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I have a suggestion for when we do go to single-payer Medicare for all. Can we transition the health care industry, the health insurance industry, over to insuring guns? That way we add jobs instead of lose jobs?
Let me hang on just a minute. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're going along with my suggestion that one of the solutions to the gun crisis in the United States is to treat guns the way that we treat cars and make sure that every gun is registered to a person or a corporation that throughout its lifespan, that any person who wants to own or use a gun has to prove proficiency. Just like if you want to drive a car, you have to have a license that's issued by a state authority. And number three, that you have to have liability insurance, so that if if the kids at Newtown or anywhere else who had been killed by a drunk driver, Geico would be paying out millions to their families, at the very least burial expenses. But as a consequence of there being no insurance requirement whatsoever, when people are killed with guns, they're just out of luck. I mean, they're just plain old flat out of luck. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, it is, and I thought this solution would be great. And I got the idea from you because of your great idea to insure guns, and so that way you could add jobs into the economy when you were transitioning away from, private health care insurance, and then also you would get the benefit of being able to have some controls over the predominant population that owns guns, and those tend to be white men.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's particularly interesting is that the vast majority of guns owned in the United States are owned by a very small number of people. I don't have the statistics right in front of me. They're in my book, The Hidden History of Guns, which is a shameless plug now available. But yeah, absolutely. Carol, thank you. Thank you for the call. That was a good one. Chuck in Mosier, Oregon. Hey, Chuck, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm thinking maybe turn the tax thing around on the Republicans and we issue in a trickle-down fat cat tax. They're always talking about trickle-down.
How would that work, Chuck?
Trickle-down, we tax the hell out of the fat cats and we get the money on the other end. Just like we're talking about, we need to raise the taxes on the rich. Well, that's one way to do it, the trickle-down approach.
Calling it a trickle-down tax is great. I think that's spectacular branding. Functionally, prior to Reagan's big tax cut in the 80s, the top tax rate of 74%, and prior to 67, a top tax rate of 91% were, salary caps. Basically, most executives in the United States didn't make more than 30 times their lowest paid employee. For that simple reason, once they started making more than 30 times their lowest paid employees, they started paying 91% or 74% in taxes. So putting that tax back on, calling it the trickle-down tax, and just saying we're trying to claw back all that money that trickled up during because of the Reagan, Bush, and Trump tax cuts, and we would like it to finally trickle down to us. So we're going to claw it back. I love it, Chuck. You are a master of branding. We will be back. It is 37 minutes past the hour. No, it's not 37. That couldn't be right. We'll be back in just a moment. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Thank you for Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's, there's there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Welcome back. AB in Lake Forest, Illinois. Hey, AB, what's up?
Oh, hi. Real fast. They shouldn't allow Medicare to be used in any commercial event, so it should just be called Advantage plans. The $19 trillion is closer to 40% of $49 trillion, and the Chinese landed on the other side of the moon, big event, and we discovered a white dwarf with attrition rings around it that glow, and it leads to a whole different way of thinking about how stars are formed. We're not paying enough attention to science, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you, AB. Tell me about this I thought that white dwarfs were the product of supernova, or am I thinking of the red giants? How do white dwarfs come about, and why are the attrition rings?
They don't know. And it's like 147 light years away. They've discovered this thing, and it was due to the fact Europeans handle their discovery differently. They've got a lot of data, and they let it out to individual people, and an individual discovered this combing over the data, which is astounding that they have a more democratic system. Also on the health thing, I lived and worked in Switzerland, and they have privatized stuff, but they limit all insurance to only 3% profit. And that is extremely
plus all the insurance companies by law are required to be not-for-profit, nonprofits.
Yes.
And Germany has done the same thing, by the way, to a large extent.
All of Europe is essentially, and I don't see anybody irate about their health care. I'm starting to get bald from just pulling my hair out. I normally have full hair, but I'm pulling my hair out over the insanity that we have happening in this country.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I tell you, when people come to me and they say, how can we afford college for all, or how can we afford health care for all in the United States? These are such big ideas. These are such radical ideas. My instant response is, well, how has literally every other developed country in the world? There are 34 nations in the Organization of Economic and Cooperation and Development, the OECD, the 34 most developed countries in the world. 33 of them provide health care to all of their citizens. 32 of them provide college education to all of their citizens. My answer to that question is, why are we so stupid? What's wrong with the United States? Please answer that for me. AB, thank you. And good on you with science. I'm with you on it. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's 28 minutes past the hour. Joan Esposito is going to drop by and say hi, and then we're going to continue taking your calls. Stick around. Hi, through the magic of some just really extraordinary and surprisingly inexpensive technology, I'm live in Chicago right now from one of our radio stations here, WCPT. And last night, I gave the keynote speech to the Kane County Democrats. Kane County is one of the big counties that's one of the big suburban counties right next to Chicago, part of Chicago, essentially. And just a decade or so ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, one of the people there was telling me that on a really good annual fundraiser, get-together, hoopla, everything, they would have 30 or 40 people show up. Last night the room was filled. It was standing room only. Well, they didn't have, fire marshals didn't allow standing, but every table was filled, every chair was filled, and it was well over 400 people, and these were paid seats because it's a fundraiser for the local Democratic Party. That's what's going on right now in politics in America. That's what you're part of. That's what Free Speech TV is part of, is awakening people to the fact that the quality of our lives, the future of our lives and our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives and future generations of literally all life on Earth depends right now on what we are doing in the political sphere. And people so got that last night. And, they showed up, they're there, they're saying, what can I do? They were honoring all these people who were doing door-to-door knocking and phone banking. I mean, it's in the cold, in the wind. I flew in yesterday in a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. It was like being on a roller coaster. And still, people are out, if you live in the northern parts of the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going on right now in Iowa and New Hampshire. You've got Democratic candidates going around for president. You've got early, candidates for primaries for the Senate and for the House who are showing up all over the country. They're doing this hard work, and the volunteers are there with them doing that hard work. And part of that work is the media. The media is the most powerful tool, frankly, the Republican Party has. If they didn't have Fox News, they'd have nothing. I'll bet you 80% of the people who are Trump supporters and diehard Republicans get all their news from Fox News. And the closest thing that the left has to Fox News, you're watching right now, Free Speech TV. We are the resistance. We are the revolution. And you can be part of that right now. You can be part of that. And we really need you to be part of that by simply calling right now. I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number here, but the phone number on your screen. I'm just going to be saying the phone number on your screen. I think I remember it correctly, but I'm probably wrong. And because I'm on a remote location here, I'm working off an email, and it doesn't have the phone number anywhere in it. So, but here are the gifts. Here are the price points. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech set of stickers. With a $72 gift, you get my new book. It's officially released in June. We'll probably get printed copies in May. And I will be autographing them, sending them back to Free Speech TV, or we'll autograph book plates and put them in them and send them to Free Speech TV, and they will ship them to you. You will be probably the first people in the country to get the book. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And it's literally about how the American genocide of the Native Americans would not have been possible without guns. That fed our gun culture. Slavery would not have been possible for Europeans, for white people to enforce slavery on Africans, on black people without guns. And then how gun activism has happened throughout the years, how the NRA and a bunch of manufacturers, well, basically how a manufacturers group took over the NRA. Did you know in the late 1970s, the NRA was in favor of gun control? It was a sportsman's group, and, they didn't want, crazies running around with AK-47s. And then it got taken over by the weapons industry. So the whole story is in the book. Anyhow, that's the $72 gift to Free Speech TV. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above, everything I just named. With a $500 gift, you get a webinar on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and even past trauma. This is like kind of phase 2, although you didn't have to have seen phase 1 of the NLP webinar that we did. But this is going much, much deeper into these ways of dealing with Donald Trump. No, seriously, there's an epidemic of anxiety. We've talked to a number of psychiatrists and psychologists on this program over the last couple of years who are saying that their caseloads are up, people are asking for more medication, people who had never before asked for medication are asking for medication, people who had never before seen a shrink are going to see, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And it's because of the anxiety being produced by the Trump administration. So that's with $500, that webinar. And with $1,000, come to Portland and I'll take you to lunch, and we'll have, typically we have 4, 5, 6 people at a time, and you hang out in the studio. We'll all go to lunch together. We'll have a nice conversation, and it's great fun. Plus, you get to see one of the greatest cities in America. So that's the deal. But please call the number on your screen right now. We need you to call and become part of Free Speech TV. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back, Tom. Welcome back, Thom Hartmann here live with you from WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820. And on Chicago's Progressive Talk, there is a new afternoon host, Joan Esposito, and she's sitting right next to me here in the studio in Chicago. And Joan, it is great having you with us.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's a real honor to be on your show. I listen to you all the time.
Well, thank you.
I'm a fan.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you. I understand that there are new polls coming out about the Chicago's mayor's race.
Just today.
Before we get into the names and everything, who are the players? For people who are not in Chicago.
How much time do you have, Tom? We have 14 people running for mayor of Chicago.
Seriously.
14 people running for mayor of Chicago. We haven't seen a field of candidates. I've been in Chicago a long time, and I don't ever remember in my eons of being in Chicago, I don't ever remember a mayoral field like this, ever. We have 14 people, and it looked like we were going to have 2 front runners.
Is it a partisan race?
It's technically not. You don't have to declare whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, though, as you might know, Chicago is a very Democratic town. There's been some argument that one of the candidates running for mayor, a businessman by the name of Willie Wilson, is really a Republican. I mean, he's been a big Trump supporter, a big Trump donor. But nobody has to say. We don't make anybody declare one way or the other in this race.
So, does it work down to 2 candidates? Is that
okay? Here's how it works
is
theoretically.
this sort of like the top 2 in California?
Yes. If somebody gets 50% of the vote or more, they are going to win it. But with 14 candidates, there's almost no chance of that happening. Nobody sees that happening. So the question is, which will be the top 2 vote getters? And for someone like me, who's going to be live tomorrow night, the tragedy is that we may not know at the end of the night.
Tomorrow is Election Day.
Tomorrow is Election Day, and we're going on the air from 7 to 10, and we may not know until March 12th or 14th.
Oh, that's a couple of weeks from now, isn't it?
Yes.
If I'm doing my math right.
Because if we don't have 2 clear, far and away top vote getters who will go into a runoff, then we have to go back and recount all the votes, plus count in all the mail-in ballots that were postmarked late but that don't arrive for a day or 2. So they just declare that they are going to wait until the beginning of the second week in March, really, to declare.
Those mail-in ballots, they would be ones that were legally postmarked
Yes.
in time, but they just arrived late because of vagaries of the mail.
You can have it. If I have a mail-in ballot, I can take it to the post office tomorrow on Election Day, get it postmarked the 26th. Obviously, it's not going to get into somebody's hot little hands that fast.
Right.
But if it will sit there to be counted.
Oh, interesting. So how's the race stacking up?
Oh, it's like shifting sands, Tom. And here's the way the dunes look today.
All right.
Tony Preckwinkle, who is the president of the Cook County Board, has been the big front runner.
Stop for a second. What's the Cook County Board?
Cook County Board is a governing body that works in conjunction with different cities that fall into Cook County, one of which is Chicago.
Is this what would typically be called a county commission?
There you go.
He's a county commissioner?
Exactly.
Okay.
She's a county commissioner, yeah. She's an African-American woman, and she's been the front runner. And, of course, we have the brother of the Daley dynasty. We have Bill Daley, Obama's former chief of staff, has thrown his hat in the ring. His brother was mayor for 20-some years. His dad was mayor for I don't know how many decades.
Oh, my.
So there's the Daley dynasty that we have. And those two, it was the common wisdom was that those two would be in the runoff. However, there's been a last-minute push by 2 other candidates, one of whom is tied now with those 2, a woman by the name of Lori Lightfoot, who's been a big, she's never held office before, but she's been a big crusader for social justice, particularly police reform. And she has been surging as of late.
With that name, is she Native American?
She is African American. She's an African American gay woman married with a daughter.
Oh, spectacular.
And has been head of, for a while was head of a police commission to look into police abuse. And she
stuff.
actually was one of the few candidates to throw her hat into the ring before our mayor, Rahm Emanuel, even said he was not going to run. So she was ready to challenge him.
So Rahm backed out? I thought that he was term limited.
No, we don't have those. That's one of the
that's
big
why
issues.
That's why the Daily Dynasty.
Of course. We like to vote for the same mayor over and over again, Tom. We get comfortable with a mayor. We break them in and we want to stay.
If they're doing a good job.
Don't rock the boat. So he of course sat on the famous Rahm Emanuel was one of the people who suppressed the video of the Laquan McDonald shooting. That was the young black man who was shot 16 times, and a police officer has been convicted of second-degree murder in that case. And that video was suppressed until after Rahm's re-election, and then when it came out, as you might imagine, everything was up for grabs, yes. And he did some damage control for a while, but it became apparent that it was going to be a real battle, and it was going to be an ugly battle. And he said no.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. So Lori Lightfoot is surging. What are the percentage numbers here?
Tony, Bill Daley, Lori Lightfoot, Tony Preckwinkle tied with 14%
each.
Each.
All three of them are
All
literally
three of them
in a dead
at
heat.
14% in a poll that came out today. And the poll, because of course, as you well know, every candidate has their own poll, and it almost always shows them ahead, which I think is very interesting. But this poll,
I noticed that a lot on Fox News.
was done by a company called 270 Strategies, and they say they are not advising any of the candidates. So they are portraying themselves as being very neutral in this race. But one other candidate who is the Illinois comptroller, Susana Mendoza, is at 10%. So she also could easily find her hat in the ring.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a wild night. It is going to be a long night, and I cannot guarantee that there's going to be a result anytime soon. You could come back a month from now, and we could still be talking about this.
Who's going to be the mayor? Yeah. So if it's going to come down to 2, and then when's the actual election?
April 2nd, when we get 2 front runners. The next election will be April 2nd.
Okay.
So we get to do all this campaign coverage all over again. Yeah. Several months just isn't enough. We need a few more months of campaign ads and campaign discussion.
I grew up in Lansing, Michigan, and lived there until I was 27, and we used to come to Chicago a lot for Christmas. We had dear friends who lived here, and Lansing was a political town. In fact, my wife's father was the assistant AG for the state, and so which was a political appointee job, or his boss was, Frank Kelly, the old attorney general, and so they were very into politics. My dad was very active in Republican politics, and we would come to Chicago, and our friends in Chicago were. I don't know if that. It's like it just seems to me like I've been awash in politics my whole entire life. And I don't know if that's something that's unique to Chicago and Lansing, or something that has to do with like big cities and capitals. Lansing's the state capital, or if that's just the way it is all over. I know it's becoming that way all over, in large part because people are saying, we really don't want this crazy guy in the White House. We're seriously worried.
I agree. I think it is becoming more the topic of conversation all over. But I think in the Midwest, we've always been more politically minded because it's a bigger deal here. If you're out on the West Coast, especially in California, you're the movie industry. If you read the LA Times, they do that huge section on entertainment business, and of course, that's what they're all about. And New York is a very worldly, cosmopolitan city that's
all about
big
business
on
and banks,
business and arts. So what do we have in the Midwest? We've got politics.
Yeah.
That's our theater, that's our arts, that's our entertainment, that's our daily life.
Yeah, our politicians are, what's the old joke about something like, politics is Hollywood for ugly people or something like that. It's a pretty shallow joke, I guess it is. But so Joan, what, on the national political scene right now, what's playing big in Chicago? What are you hearing on your show? You're doing a show here on WCPT every afternoon. You're talking to people for 3 hours every afternoon. And setting aside Chicago politics for a moment, what's your sense of the pulse of this country?
I think that this area was deeply disturbed by the partial government shutdown. I think that this area is deeply disturbed by this whole idea of a fake emergency to get the border wall built. And I think this area is a very strong area for a woman's right to choose. And this most recent balloon that the Trump administration is floating about trying to figure out different ways to restrict abortion rights, I think that's going to be a huge
Well, the most recent thing they did was not a balloon. They just issued an executive order or an order that any agency that refers people, it literally says, here's where you can go to get an abortion, loses access to federal funds. They can no longer be a provider. I mean, this is designed to take down Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely, it's designed to take down Planned Parenthood. And this Illinois is a real leader in women's rights like this, and I think that Illinois is going to be in the forefront of the effort to fight this.
Yeah, wow, extraordinary. What are other topics you mentioned? I'm sorry. we talked about abortion. What else?
People are reacting to the fact of the border wall and the fake emergency to try to get the money for the border wall.
Let's talk about that. I mean, Chicago's a diverse city. It's historically been a white-black diverse city. There's been a lot of Hispanic folks coming into the Midwest over the last 3 decades or so. And how has that changed the politics of Chicago, and to what extent is the border wall, outside of just being Democratic versus Republican, how is that playing here?
Well, Chicago, regardless of its demographic composition, Chicago has always been very, very solidly Democratic. Maybe not always as progressive as some people would like, but we've always been, I think, in the forefront of people pushing for social issues and social justice. And I don't think, yes, there have been a huge influx of Latinx in the area, but I don't think that's going to change the overall thrust of where the city goes politically. I think it might change the faces you see in our city council if they start to more reflect their neighborhoods. But I think that even the old white folks in Chicago have always been very socially conscious and very progressive. I love this town.
Yeah, I love Chicago too. I'm curious your thoughts on Governor Pritzker. You've got a brand new governor who is a progressive billionaire, which is, some people would say is an oxymoron, but he appears to be a hell of a good guy.
Yes, I think he's going to be a terrific mayor. I think personally that there's a difference in the personalities of the people who are born to wealth as opposed to the people who make it themselves. I've known a lot of self-made men, and they tend to be very aggressive and somewhat narcissistic, and that's Rauner. I mean, he built this business, and I think
he's the former billionaire governor.
Rauner, yes,
he was a Republican.
Former billionaire, and I think he fits that mold. J.B. Pritzker was born into enormous wealth, and I have had some interactions with the Pritzker family, and like many families that have had wealth for generations, they are very, very, very into philanthropy.
Yeah.
The things they do, they donate to schools, they start programs. Before he was ever a politician, he was pushing for, making sure that early childhood education the idea was spread, and that kids didn't go hungry. So I think that Pritzker is going to be a fabulous governor, despite his billions.
Joan, it is so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for
Tom.
letting me share we're in your studio here.
And next time you can have my chair.
Okay, well, thank you. Joan Esposito, the new afternoon host here on WCPT AM 820. Joan, thank you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Have a great rest of your show.
Thank you. And we'll be back with more of your calls in the news of the day in just a moment. Oh, and we're going to check in with Talk Media News in a little bit as well. And welcome back. Jeanette in Druryville, Virginia. Hey, Jeanette, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to re-emphasize you don't understand about the Medicaid, really understand about the Medicaid Plus because it's just another big scam by like the banks and Wall Street.
You mean Medicare Advantage?
Yes, yes. They're just emptying out our Social Security money. It's just a big scam by just like all of them.
Yep,
and I'm so glad I got to tell you that today because I heard that man's desperation when he talked to you about it, but nobody really picked up on the severity of it.
Yeah, and it is. Medicare Advantage is not Medicare. Medicare Advantage is a private insurance program that has been allowed by law to use that name, and they take money from Medicare in order to pay their bills. And
every bit of it.
Yeah,
that's how they can give all that extra stuff out. And they're
right. And
they're just selling us
and they're making a
more
fortune
shit,
doing
you
it.
know, more stuff.
Well, we can't talk like that, Jeanette. I'm sorry, but yeah, they're selling us on some bad stuff. You're absolutely right. Brady in Portales, New Mexico. Hey, Brady, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Yes, I'd like to speak about the wall. You'd think a politician or coming from The Apprentice and firing everybody would be a little more creative, economical. Of these people are coming over here to work. I don't believe most of them are criminals at all. That they're here to work, and the people in Washington must not like milk or cheese because that's where they get it from. Is these Hispanics who's working at all these dairies and stuff. But if you can't pay for the wall,
but Brady, I think that you need to make a distinction. The people who are coming to the United States from south of the border to work has become virtually a trickle, and for most of the last 10 years, there have been people who had come here from south of the border leaving. There had been actually what's called net negative immigration. People who had come here for a job have actually been leaving and going back to Mexico or going back to cities or countries south of the border. On the other hand, we've got this horrible mess in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, that was created by Ronald Reagan supporting these death squads down in Central and South America. And now it looks like Donald Trump and Elliot Abrams are going to do the same thing in Venezuela. And those people are coming here because they're trying to avoid literally murder and rape and the killing of their families and the enslavement of their children. And that's a completely different thing.
That's true of that thing. But as far as building the wall and financing the wall, we have wind and solar power, and we have homes here in Taos, New Mexico, earthships that are 100% efficient, doing something more creative instead of throwing all of our stuff in a landfill. And these people on the border that need to work and want to work and willing to work, we need to create eco-friendly solutions instead of a wall or even a wall. You could grow medical marijuana to finance it. People would be loved to invest in something like that. If he has to build a wall, there's a way to finance it. Putting people to work down there of wind power, solar power, and things that the Southwest has from California to Texas that would pay for the wall if he has to have a wall. But there's more eco-friendly ways of doing these things to finance it and work with
I get it. I get it. Brady, we're hitting a break here. I got to bail out. My old friend, as you mentioned, Earthships, my old friend Dennis Weaver, the actor who has now passed away. I wrote the foreword to his autobiography, The Whole World's a Stage, lived in an Earthship. Amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Welcome back. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do. Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us is former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, also the author of Sideswiped, the book you need to read if you want to know all the sneaky stuff that goes on in Washington, D.C., and particularly all about the crimes of John Boehner. Bob, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
So, and I was not joking. You literally do reveal the crimes of John Boehner in that book. And in fact, in the book, you say, if a federal prosecutor wants to go after him, I'm willing to testify.
Well, yes, and I laid every single thing out. You know, some of the people said, well, you'll be sued when you write this. I said, no, because he can't afford discovery, all the things that would be found out. I laid every single thing out. I mean, he did what they put Governor Blagojevich in jail for, frankly. You know, he had me get out to buy the seat if I left with a paycheck and some legal defense fund, which never came about. But,
that's
history.
Amazing. So, Bob, what's up in the news today?
Well, we've got the split screen. I know everybody's been talking about that today. And the split screen on the right side, you have President Trump on Wednesday will be in Vietnam, of course, with Kim Jong-un for the summit. And on the split screen, the left side is going to be his former attorney, Michael Cohen, who will do, as you know, 3 different committee hearings. 2 will be private, one with the House Intel Committee and the other with the Senate Intel Committee. Senate Intel Committee actually comes first on Tuesday night. And then the public one, which is the big deal, will be Wednesday for the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. And in that, and people thought, well, it's going to be about Russia, but it's not. It's going to be about a whole wide variety and host of other issues that Cohen will be asked questions on, including the Trump finances, the Trump business, the Stormy Daniels payments, and a wide variety of other questions. Of course, Tom, I talked to some people on the Hill today, and on the Republican side, there will be a very tough lashing out at Cohen, for the most part, maybe not all members, but lashing out at Cohen for, the fact of, well, you came before, you lied, you're lying again, and, and trying to dispute certain things that he said.
The Republicans are going to try and take him down.
It's going to be bombastic, and it's really, it's going to be something else. Ironically, it will fall again on the same day as when the president's in Vietnam. And also, the Mueller report will not be out this week. Some say that Mueller did not want to lose the publicity of the report, but from what we pick up, if anything, it would be the fact that in deference to the president, Mueller would not release a report while he's out of the country.
Now, I had heard a rumor, and I'll acknowledge right up front that's a rumor. I did hear it from a well-connected political person in Washington, D.C., who I'm guessing has no inside legal knowledge, who said that what's really going on is that Bob Barr is pressuring Mueller to wrap it up. I mean, Bob Barr is the guy who famously covered up Iran-Contra, advised George Herbert Walker Bush. He was George H.W. Bush's AG, to pardon all those guys. Do you think Bob Barr has anything to do with this, Bob, real quick?
Well, I think
Bill
Barr is, might
Bill
have
Barr.
something to do. Yes.
Yeah, you think he might have something to do with it. We'll have to have that conversation tomorrow or later on in the week. I'm looking forward to it. Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. And thanks to WCPT for having us, and thanks to the Kane County Democrats for hosting me and having me keynote their fundraiser. It was great fun. We're having a great time here. And we'll be back tomorrow live from Portland. So in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.